memory. It builds emotional muscle. It builds your skills, which are key. So the more we practice, the easier it becomes to do that. But if you just spend the next 5 minutes or so doing this exercise, I just want you to think about times you responded, good and bad, in a work environment when you've been angry. When I mention angry, I'm not saying, you know, completely red mist angry, where you've been tempted to go outside and get your baseball. I'm just saying, generally speaking, the buttons have been pressed and you know, you've reacted good and bad. So let's spend 5 minutes to have a go at that, and we'll go from there. Just put an underline on the things you did well and the things that you didn't do well. But going forward, okay, going forward, you can reflect on the things that you did really, really well. And it goes back to what we said earlier. Analyze good practice. Okay, analyze good practice. What's really interesting and what's really important as we move forward, and what I will say is, I mentioned earlier about how we delete information. I can guarantee in the space of a week, you'll have more than likely to be where you are and to do what you do, have handled predominantly most things that you do really, really well. The things that a lot of people tend to remember more are sometimes the negatives. And there's a danger in doing that. You've probably handled 50 things really well, and the one thing that you didn't handle as well as you'd like to have handled, you focus on that. And there's a danger in doing that. Reflect on the things that you did really well, and then turn the thing that you didn't do really well in the future into a positive. And you're thinking, you know what, I've done that again. So it's worth sort of underlining the positives and the negatives and taking some time to think about that. So we'll have a couple of minutes to okay, our responses. I might join in actually on this one. I think I might join in. So okay, we've got 3 levels here. And we've got E, which is exit and walk out. V, voice, say something and do something about it. And we've got the L, loyalty, basically shut up and stay. We've got 3 choices. The one thing we have got in certain situations is choice. So let's say, for example, you've been working. Let's paint the scenario here. You've been working one day and you got home late. By the second day, your time that you meant to finish is at 5 o'clock. It gets to about 7. By the time you get away, you still haven't finished the work you need to finish, yet the boss has asked you, or the manager has asked you to finish off the sort of work that he's finishing off. It's got to 7, and in your mind, what are some of your thoughts? What do you think some of your thoughts will be if you're sort of dragging the work out to 7 o'clock? And you should have been finished at 5.
I'm thinking Wednesday, I'm going home at 3.
Yeah. That's a good shout. Definitely. And think about things that are going through your mind. Okay, you're probably thinking about your partner who's going to have a go at you for working late again. You know, your kids. You've missed salsa dancing, you missed Coronation Street, you missed taking them off for a walk, or maybe you missed all 3. So all these things are going through your mind. Yet, you know, you think, you know what, I'll put it in because I enjoy the job and I enjoy working for the person I'm working with. It's actually a nice person. We work really well together. Yet in saying that, it's the second night, you've been asked to work late, you've got all these emotions that are going on in your hearts and minds. You get the job done, you finally get home, 8:30, 9 o'clock, you don't even bother to eat, you're tired, you just slump on the sofa, have a coffee or a tea, and eventually you get to bed, and then the next day, it's midday, and the boss approaches you and says, just before you go to lunch, I'm going to need you to work back again tonight. It's the 3rd night in a row. By now, you've got the butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker all on your back, the kids, the dog, and your partner. How do you respond? How does anyone respond? What do? Do you walk away for lunch and not come back? Okay. Do you respond emotionally and leave out all that frustration that's going through your mind? Or do you say, you know what, not a problem, I'll do it. Just think about how you would respond in that situation. Take some time to think about how you would respond. Anyone to share how they would respond? Sorry? You'd say no? Okay. Yeah. Anyone else say? Would anyone stay?
Some reasonable.
Yeah. Okay.
You'd ask if it was normal.
Yeah, or what's
You'd ask if, sorry,
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
you'd ask if this was going to be a common and recurring theme,
Yeah.
and if so, am I going to get paid for it?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would be a combination of being helpful, would say you tell me how you feel, but you still stay.
Yeah. Okay, so you'd tell them how you felt, but you'd still stay. Okay, you'd make your feelings known.
You shouldn't, I think you could express how you felt about it, but then you could like say, yeah, let's come to some sort of compromise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's in it
Yeah.
for me? If it's important, I'll stay, but if it's just you just want me to stay.
Yeah. So there's variable ways we can respond to certain situations.
It's very clever how you ask the question in the first place as well. You know, when they put it in a certain way that you feel obliged to say yes before you say no.
So you would feel obliged to stay?
Yeah, but you know.
Yeah, but if you had a 12-month-old baby at the nannies, you know, you couldn't do that.
Yeah. No, of course, you know, of course, certainly within reason. Yeah, definitely. Everyone's circumstances are different. Yet in saying that, whether you've got that baby to attend to, whether you want that work-life balance, what's important to you is important to you. Yeah, in saying that, you know, I guess you're willing to compromise your own life balance for certain situations. Sometimes I guess we need to in certain situations. Yet our response and how we communicate is instrumental in what outcome we achieve by the end of it. Now, I'm not saying you should do either or all of the three or one of the above, but the key is for your own thoughts and feelings is to be aware, because I guess whatever you do, every action will have a reaction to a certain degree in certain situations. So it's weighing all that up really. But how many people actually just carry on with it and you know, bottle it all up in silence? Would anyone actually, you know, hold anyone have been in a situation where we held things in?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have.
Yes.
So I got
You-
out of it.
Okay, yeah,
There's
definitely.
a great British tradition as well of complaining to the wrong person.
Yeah.
To complain to somebody else who can't do a damn thing about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, you know, what happens in time if you do that, imagine getting a bottle of fizzy pop, Coke or Pepsi, whatever it is, and just shake it and shake it and shake it until eventually you open it. What happens when you open it? Exactly. Exactly. And I'm sure we've all been in situations like that where you've just bottled it all in, and then eventually you just, bang, it's not fizzy pop, really. So, in a certain sense, communication is key to our own health and our own well-being as well. But also, on a bigger scale as well, we talked about our own life balance as well, which is key. If, you know, the situation that you're in, it could present personal problems. You know, it could have, you know, manifested in a lot of things could happen as a result of doing that. So being aware of that is important. I guess it always goes back to what outcome. Now, I'm not saying one is right or wrong or one is better than the other, but having the awareness and making sure what you do is conducive to a positive outcome is key. Also, in saying that, what's really important in a situation or any situation is to, I guess, see things from other people's point of view as well too. You know, open up some sort of dialogue. How many situations have you been in a work environment where people haven't communicated, they've not talked about, they've not taken the time to think about what your thoughts and feelings are? We're not robots, are we? You know?
No, but I agree with what Brande's just been talking about, in that people won't communicate to the boss, but they'll go and communicate to the colleagues.
And that's a great point, and that sort of harks with you earlier. The exercise with you earlier, where one message goes to some person, and then by the end of the day or the week, it gets back to the boss. It's completely distorted, and it's not what it is. And how's the boss going to react in that situation? Probably not very favourably. When the point was great, you know, speak to the person that can do something about it.
Yeah, but you get people who like complaining and don't want it resolved, they just like complaining.
Well, yeah, I mean, you get the secondary gainers, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, you get the people definitely in a work situation where, okay, you know, first thing Monday morning, they come in with their list of problems. It's almost like this, isn't it? They come in to work, their list, and all they have to do is waffle on about everything that's going on in their life. If they haven't put it on Facebook, on Twitter, on every other social media, they're citing it. And then you get the next person, pick up their list. My problems are bigger than yours. No, mine are bigger than yours. This is what's happened to me. Yeah, secondary gain. Some people get emotional gratification. Okay, and I guess to a certain extent, you're probably not doing them any favours by absorbing that information. You're not doing yourself any favours because it doesn't do very well for your own energy. But you're not doing them any favours because they're not going to get anywhere nearer to a solution. Okay, so I would say definitely in that situation, I would detach yourself from what we call energy sappers, which is key. I mean, I was brought into an organisation recently to do some coaching and development. This is an organisation literally on its backside, in a lot of trouble. So I've gone in there to do some sort of work, and there's 2 or 3 people that are very instrumental in the organisation, so they say that talk about everything that is going on or wrong in the organisation, everything that's wrong in the world, so to speak. And I'm thinking about a solution here. Okay, and they seem to be taking gain from the situation they're in. And I said, you know what, why don't you just leave? If you don't like it, leave. Well, I can't leave. The last time I looked, you've not got a gun to your head. You can walk away, no one's going to stop me from going. Well, I can't. You've got choice. And it goes back to the old analogy. You don't know how much you miss something until it's gone. And I said, okay, we'll go away and write a list of all the things that you do have from having this work. I'm not saying it's ideal and where you want to stay, but at least it helps them to realise they're in a situation that can be positive. They can move forward. But there is that danger in that situation that people do get that gain. There is that danger. And I think it's a great point, because from a coach-client point of view, you've got to know where to draw the line here. Because you're going to have clients coming in that, if you're in a coaching capacity, okay, I guess it's fine if you're a counsellor, and counsellors have their place in my view, because people need to open up. Yet, it's fine to a certain extent, but if you're looking to be proactive and move forward, unless you want these people to come every week and pay your mortgage off and butter your head, then it's not moving them forward. There's got to be a point to say, you know what do you want to happen? Where do you want to be? If you want to carry on running over the same old ground and putting that CD, so to speak, or putting that bad film on, then it's up to you. You wouldn't go home every night and put a bad film on, would you? Or listen to a bad CD, or would you? So the key thing is sometimes you've got to eject it, which is key. But I think that the most powerful thing you can ask anyone from a coaching point of view is ask the person, what do you want? And stop them in their tracks. What exactly do you want to happen? And the first thing a lot of people will tell you is what they don't want to happen. And what do we want to do? A negative instruction? I don't want to be depressed no more. What's that telling the mind? Precisely. So how do you want to feel?
It's worth being aware as well that although it's an obvious thing to say, what do you want? I can think of one of my clients, it took me half an hour to get us from saying I don't want to I want.
Yeah.
Half an hour.
That's good going. It's taken me 6 months to help someone. It's taken me a few years.
Without talking, without veering from the subject at all, I said, okay, that's what you don't want, what do you want?
Yeah.
What I don't want, that's what you don't want. What?
Yeah.
Half an hour.
Precisely, yeah,
to
definitely.
get one word out.
That's good going in half an hour. I've had classic one situation with a client who came along, and I said to her, what exactly do you want to happen? She was telling me about how her life was miserable and how the whole world was against her. And here's somebody on the face of it that, in my view, I thought seemed to be doing pretty good. Good job, nice car, nice place. I guess from the outside looking in, we've all got our levels of resilience and we've all got things that make us happy, but yet in saying that, for the normal person, in the world seems to be okay. Yet in saying that, I asked her just out of curiosity, because she told me that she thinks she might be depressed. No clinical diagnosis, just she read a magazine, Signs and Symptoms of Depression. I'm depressed.
Mostly A's.
Yeah, I'm depressed. And what makes me depressed? Yeah. And her diagnosis came from Facebook. Eventually she said, whenever I log on Facebook, I see everybody's got happy pictures. Why are they so happy? Why is everyone so happy? Nobody puts sad pictures up on Facebook, not that I know of. I said, do you? No, I don't. I said, well, and precisely, I'd asked her what she wanted, and, between doing the consultation and the session, 6 months later, I thought, is it something I said? She didn't come back. She says, I've got some news for you. After doing the session with you, I decided I knew what I wanted. It took me a while to get there, so I decided to go out there and travel, and I come back, and I'm okay. And it's interesting, really, how it takes time, definitely. Sometimes it's about aligning our own values. But that's another story for another day. The other scenario is here, okay, you offer the pay rise below the level of inflation. What do? You're working hard, you've been instrumental for the work that you're doing. Okay, or even as a coach or client, okay, times are changing as a coaching client. You're stuck at your prices for a certain level. Okay, you start paying your prices for a certain level, how do you adjust that? You know, what do you do if you've got a client that comes back every year for some coaching sessions and you move your price up and think, well, how much? How do you respond? What would you do? What do you do? Do you walk away? Do you negotiate? Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Anybody?
To find out the reason why.
The reason why? Okay.
Why it would be lower than, especially if it made stupid profit.
Yeah.
That's
It
what
manages
the
like me.
reason- I'd like to know what the reason is
Yeah.
behind it.
Yeah.
Before it made it.
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. So you'd reflect on it and find out the reasons why. Okay. Anything different? Would anyone walk out?
I've been in it, because I work, I'm always getting paid below the level of inflation. Oh, after the last 3 years, it's essentially a pay cut, it's a pay freeze. I've been quite loyal to working for who I work for, but it has got to the stage now where they give redundancy figures out and I've asked for mine and I want to take it.
Yeah.
I'm sick of
Okay,
that.
so that you, on that level, yeah.
So I'm ready to
Yeah, do something about it. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Definitely, yeah. And I think the key thing is, I guess where money's concerned, it's all relative, isn't it, really? I remember once I was delivering a coaching package to a group of coaches at a specific football team, and they had it in their mind, they weren't getting paid. I just came in as a performance coach to change their fortunes, and I sort of looked what was going on passively. They didn't really know what I was doing. But what I found that really interesting, I said to some of the coaches, why aren't you planning? Where's your sessions plans? Why aren't you evaluating? Why aren't you in meetings? Well, what's going on here? You just simply going through Demotions. And I said, well, we would do it if we were getting paid more. I said, do you need to get paid more to do a good job? So in my own mind, I felt, you know, where do you draw the line? I guess only you know your self-worth, which is key. But I think where that's concerned, you can do either or. I guess in a way you set your own worth in certain situations. And I think that what you do as a consequence is entirely up to you, but it's worth bearing that in mind. I guess in your own mind, you might have a factor figure that you want to have. And who's to say that you're right or wrong? You know, whatever value you put upon yourself. But, you know, how you respond to a given situation is key. And if you've been instrumental in that environment and you've worked very hard for a very long time, then, you know, you might start feeling a little bit aggrieved. Particularly when you pick up the paper and you see the people at the very highest, you know, seem to be getting pay rises as well. So all situations are relative, and everyone's in a different situation, but it's some food for thought for you as you go along. The next scenario is, okay, you're giving new equipment at work, but no formal training. What do you do? Yeah, definitely. You're giving a microphone to do a talk that they promised you was going to work, but it's been making all sorts of sounds.
So Paul Workman that blames his tools.
No, thanks very much for that. Thank you.
You can get the later.
You can either raise your voice and speak louder.
You're doing all right.
You can take offence to a member of the group that has a go at you. You can try and fix that at the interim and still none the wiser.
I think it depends on, you'd have to evaluate it, wouldn't you? Because it depends, if new equipment's a circular saw, then obviously there's more problem than new equipment on top of pen. You know,
Yeah. Yeah, no, of course, definitely. Yeah, within reason, again, I think all these things are relative. But yeah, in saying that, if you don't genuinely understand what to do you carry on doing it? Certainly in my experience, I've seen people sort of carry on doing it because they don't want to appear to be one thing or the other. Yeah.
I'd always ask. I'd always ask, especially if it's something to do with safety.
But even for
Your own
directions in a car.
safety.
Yeah. Sorry?
Even for directions in a car.
After I've got lost a couple of times.
Yeah.
Depends how dangerous and early it was.
And I think, you know, all these things are really important, particularly for those of you who work for yourselves. Because when you work for yourself, it can be a lonely world out there. You know, a one-person band, so to speak. And you're dealing with certain things all the time, because I guess you're not only doing the work as a practitioner, you're also running a business as well, to a certain degree. So what you do is you've got a particular client who comes in and they've, you know, booked themselves onto 5 or 6 sessions. And the clients come along in good faith and says, I want to book 6 sessions with you as a nutritionist, as a coach, or whatever you do. And then after the consultation, they say, well, I'll send you a check, I'll transfer the money into your account, and it's it doesn't arrive. What do? Do you pull them up on it? Do you just, you know? Yeah. Of course you do, because you've got better things to do with your own time. But in saying that, common practice, common knowledge, it's not always common practice, is it? For one reason or the other. Especially when you enjoy what you do. When I first started working in the industry I'm working in now, all those years ago, probably before some people in the audience were born, but I won't go down there. It was an issue with me, because I enjoyed what I did. And people would come along, and I'd think, well, if I don't run as a business here, I'm not going to be able to do what I do anymore. So you had to have that assertiveness and say, you know what, I'm going to put some boundaries in place here. I'm not going to survive anymore, which is key. You know, I would generally say most people who have a job won't go to work for not getting paid, but that's normally a problem when you are self-employed. Making sure that you're very assertive and have the measures in place. And I found personally that some of the big organisations you work for are the most difficult to deal with. It's absolutely shocking. I've delivered training for some of the biggest organisations you could ever imagine. And one organisation, I'm not going to say who it is on camera, I might tell you later on, but I've delivered training for them. And it's like all these things, you know, it's always ironic, isn't it? It always comes at a certain time in your life. There's a certain time in my life where, you know, going back a few years ago, I had a few challenges, a few businesses had gone under for one reason or the other, in a past life, so to speak. And I was in a situation where I was rebuilding as a coach. I was coming off the back end of running these businesses in sport and training and agencies, all that sort of stuff. So I sort of had a bit of time out. I got back into the business and, you know, I was very good at what I did. I got results and I was quite fortunate enough to get certain tenders. I'm working for one organisation. And I'd spent the best part of God knows how long delivering training, and the money wasn't forthcoming.
Got to be a bank.
Well, I won't go down there, but the bottom line is that I'm thinking to myself, well, it's not forthcoming here. So I politely, goes back to what we said before, politely, you know, requested it. I'd given them terms and everything else that went with it. And I thought, for the life of me, I can't get my head around why they would do that. Yet, in saying that, as it happens, call me cynical as I get into my middle age. You know, I'd worked out that actually, you know what, for some of these big businesses, if the small person goes bust, well, they need to pay. So am I just one in the food chain that's just going to sort of running? I don't know. Maybe I'm being cynical. I don't know. Until eventually I thought, you know what, if not for me, I've got staff that have worked with me, and they need to be paid. And a member of staff that was chasing the accounts up, and they'll, you know, fobbing off over and over again, until eventually I raised my level of assertiveness. And it was ironic, really. I raised my level of assertiveness. By the end of it, for whatever reason, the person I'd spoken to in the accounts had actually gone to the director and said they weren't happy with the tonality of how I'd spoken to them. And they did me a favour, really, because the director phoned up and says, I'm not very happy about the way you spoke to a member of staff. I said, I'm not very happy. It's taken 9 months for you to credit me with some money. I've got staff to pay. I said, is that how you treat? He says, I wasn't aware of that. I said, well, I've sent in several emails. I said, why didn't they make you aware of that? They've made you perfectly aware of how I've responded to them today. They've made you aware of, you know, countless emails. And basically, you don't want to get into an argument in LP, it's not a good idea. And basically, at the end of it, he said to me, you know what, I'm going to transfer your money today, and you can sod off, we'll never do business with you again. I said, you know what, you can sod off as well. I don't want to do business with you again. Okay, so, you know, we don't live in that area very well, do we? So, how you raise your level of certainty is entirely up to you. You know, I'm not saying that in every situation you're going to be people's doormat. Yet, in saying that, one of the things we do cover a little bit later on in the program is just looking at our own assertiveness, because different situations call for different responses. But one of the key things I think for anything that you do is listening skills. Crucial. Our listening skills. Okay, being very attentive to what someone's got to say. And certainly in a coaching capacity, one of the things I do, I'm very mindful of, I'm very attentive of the person. All my attention is focused, from a coaching point of view, on what the person is saying. Body language, tonality, verbally. And I'm thinking about that, and I'm considering all that before I implement any action to move forward. Really important. I see even some of the best coaches dive in. The person's just about to tell them what the problem is, what the issue is. Do you mean this? Do you mean that? No, let them speak. Let them have their say. And the same goes for any level of communication in management, in leadership. Let them have their say, let them have their piece, and be very attentive. And whilst they're saying what they say, it may stir up certain emotions in certain situations, particularly if you're in a dialogue with someone, hence chasing up this money that was due for months on end. Yet in saying that, by letting them have their piece, it then helps you to move forward in the direction that you want to go to reach a positive outcome, which is key. What do you think some of the barriers are? We've got some barriers there to listening. What do you think some barriers are to listening for people? Or let's look at some of the barriers that we've got here. Okay, past experiences, the message, okay, individual bias, worry, fear. So all these things can be potential barriers to listening or affect our listening. Anyone experience any of those barriers in communication? Yeah. And how did it impact your communication process? Yeah? Okay. Yeah, definitely. I often have this theory where coaching is concerned. I'll be honest. I'm going to be straight and honest here. In certain situations when I'm coaching, I will do everything that I can in the best interest of the client. And at certain times, I may say something that they might not want to hear. They might go 2 blocks down the road and find the coach will tell them what they want to hear, will take their money. Okay, and they might feel good about themselves momentarily, yet I'll work on the basis on what they may need to hear, which is important, instrumental in receiving a positive outcome. Okay, being very direct in terms of, okay, how can I apply these techniques based on where they are, which is a crucial element there. Now, of course, from a client point of view, they're going to put some barriers up. Sometimes I've heard it all before. And what do people do when they have barriers? What do they do? What's some of their body language? What's some things that they do when a person has a block? Yeah, precise. Yeah, definitely. Well, it might even be that as well. Definitely. So all these things can happen. Okay, which is key, which is important. I think that's why it's important for your listening skills. Because one of the things that I've had situations where I've been in situations where I mentioned before about telling the person what they may need to hear based on the experience I've got and the toolkit I've got, and they get the barrier there. Yet by listening to what their problem is and being empathic, and sometimes paraphrasing what it is, and assuring it on their team, I'm helping them to achieve the outcome they want to. And anyone worth their salt who's booked in sessions to get to where they want to get to, and the sort of person you want to work with anyway, will be honest and open with themselves. We've all been there. I've been there in certain situations. You have that look in the mirror. So.
What happens when the other person's not listening? Because I have a tendency to talk over somebody. I've heard a couple of words. You're not listening to me, so I'll talk over you. And I start talking over somebody because I think they haven't listened. Yeah. Their response isn't the response, or they haven't heard me properly. Yeah. So what would you do if the person's not listening, or you don't think they're listening? They're listening, or talk over them so they start.
Yeah, that's one way to do it, isn't it? There we go. There we go. Yes.
I ask questions and ask them their opinion on things and things like that.
I think the more information you've got from their point of view, different people process information. We're going to cover that shortly in different ways as well. And being aware of that, sometimes communication can break down as a result of the way they process information as well. So it may not be a barrier that we've mentioned here as such, it just may be the way they process information through their senses. See, hear, feel. We'll touch on that briefly as we go along. But I think, I guess, you're within your right to gauge every situation as you see fit, really. From a coaching point of view, if I talked over someone to shut them down, how do you think they might respond? Potentially. They might do, definitely. And I'm in the business of results. All I say in coaching, you're in the business of results. Most of the work comes from results. If you don't get results, you don't eat. Simple as that. And I think the challenge is really, the key is to help people get to where they want to get to. And obviously, if you help them get to where they want to get to, then you'll get to where you want to get to as well. But I think the communication process is quite powerful. Definitely sometimes easing back, letting them have their say. If nothing else, they're venting their own emotions as well. So the key thing is, listening and acknowledging, paraphrasing. Has anyone been to a doctor before? And you think, has this person taken on board anything I've said? Yeah, there we go. Or you might go to someone, a doctor and you feel confident and comfortable in the knowledge that they actually have. So paraphrasing is quite useful, acknowledging their opinion, even if the opinion doesn't sit well with us, can be quite powerful as well. And the ability to listen gives the speaker a greater sense of satisfaction. Think about your own transactions. You know, sometimes what we do, I guess we always think that we could be right in certain situations. Maybe we're not right. Maybe our opinion might be right, might be wrong for a certain situation. But these are some key points to think about. You know, paraphrasing what the problem might be, because that gives a person the awareness that you've at least taken the time to understand, let them have their say. They're just some key points and a little bit of food for thought, really, as you go along on your journey. Reflecting as well is quite useful as well. Reflecting is very powerful. How many people reflect? There's a show of hands. Who reflects? Okay. Powerful stuff. Reflecting on certain situations. As long as you don't do it with 2 bottles of whiskey at 3 o'clock in the morning on a Tuesday night.
2 weeks.
Yeah. Or you pick up the phone and phone up someone you've spoken to in how many years. Okay, so reflecting is a very, very powerful tool, one of the most powerful tools you've got. Managing your emotions is powerful, and we've talked about that in communication throughout the evening. Our anger. What emotions do you experience on the roller coaster ride of communication? What are some of the key emotions? Boredom. Anything else? Frustration. Yeah. All these things. Anger, resentment. All these things come into it. Think about it. You've gone for a job. Let's say there's a promotion at work, and you and somebody else have gone for it, and they get the job, and you think you were the right person to get the job. How do you feel? Yeah. How might you respond? He or she's useless, you should have chosen me. It's probably not going to do your cause any good, moving forward. And as a coach point of view, managing your emotion is key. Because one, you don't want to get drawn into the person's emotional state. It could be overwhelming and draining of your own energy. 2, you want to make an informed decision to move forward. So it's a very, very powerful process. And I would go so far to say that your emotions are key in communicating. Assertiveness is powerful. Just a show of hands, who would say they're assertive in the group? Okay, some do, some don't. I guess it's all relative to different situations. Okay, but this is an exercise we can do, which is quite useful to you. Think of a time that you were a doormat, so to speak. Has everyone been there before? You think, well, I've been a doormat. Yeah. There we go. It's all coming out now. Yeah, and just think about what happened and what you did and how you felt. And that's a process you can take away from here this evening. Think about certain situations where, okay, you felt you've compromised. Maybe it might have been negotiating your car insurance and thought later on, damn, I should have told them I was going to cancel. Or it could have been your farm. It could be anything. It could have been the job. What do you do? What would you do if you go to a job interview and you don't get any feedback after a day? Who's getting in touch?
I've just done that with Sky TV.
Okay. Yeah.
I phoned up about 3 weeks ago and it was water all over. So I sat and thought about it. And I thought, no, I'll come up with a different plan. And I phoned up last week and I've just got a totally brand new deal for a low price just because I went a different way about doing it.
Yeah. So you put it into effect already, yeah, definitely. So we do that already anyway. But being aware of it can be very powerful. And we can relate that to anything really. Having that assertiveness. Okay, it could be the job interview. It could be the person who inquires for a coaching session. Okay, and you give them all the information and you don't hear back. What do? You get in touch and see what their thoughts and feelings are. At what point do you get in touch? I guess it's for you to decide. What I would say personally, what you do with this information is up to you, but what I would say, if something's not working and you carry on doing it, change. Yeah. Well, difference in insanity. Doing the same thing, expecting a different result. So changing could be a possibility. On the flip side of things, what about when the shoe's on the other foot? Think of a time that you may have been too over the top, too bossy. It's reaching a compromise. For me, I'll be honest, it's a challenge in the work I do. It's so variable, the work I do. You know, one moment I'm working with a high risk offender, they're what they call the worst 3% in the country, and the next minute I'm working with, say, a business person. Then I've got someone who's coming in to see me in the evening who, you know, their child might have an eating disorder or might have a condition like fibromyalgia or chronic fatigue or whatever. So it's so broad. So how do I reach the happy medium? And I reflect in certain situations. And in certain times I thought, you know what, maybe I should have did things differently. I don't know. With hindsight, which is key. Yet in different situations, you've got to put a different hat on. So those who are coaching are going to do people across a broad range of areas. It's being aware. You know, certainly a few months ago, I was working with an individual. He had chronic fatigue. I do a lot of work with people in that environment, and I'm successful in that environment as well to help people, you know, get their life back. And we'll work on the program. His mum was sponsoring the program. I gave him some stuff to go away and do. He didn't do it after the first week, he didn't do it after the second week. And there came a point where I thought, what do I do? Am I firm and fair? Where do I go with this? Knowing that this could tilt the balance and could affect the person. So being aware of the overall situation is key. Yet in saying that, throughout the course of a day, different things are going to influence what you do as well. Because we are only human. You're a coach, and I think it's really important to, you know, to go to events and to talk to people and network, because there'll be a lonely world out there. Because certain sessions in certain situations can stir your own emotional part up as well. You know, you might be going through, I don't know, you might have lost a contract. You might be going through a breakup. All these things go on. And obviously these things can affect us, professionally and personally. But being aware of that is key for ourselves. Because it goes back to being professional, the adult state. I've seen a lot of people, particularly with the high-risk offenders, have problems in their personal life. Some take it with them, the baggage. And they're in a very difficult situation. Because if they pick up any weakness, they're going to run rings around them. And that problem they might have is going to magnify. So awareness is really important for them. Okay, it's really important to not to take whatever anybody else says personally, just go back to process, but also ourselves. Sometimes we might react a bit over the top, and finding balance is a challenge, but thinking about that and taking that information is useful for you in moving forward. Rapport. Okay, so with the time we've got left, rapport is a massive area. Well, I'll cover as much as we possibly can do, to give you some tools to take away. I'm not suggesting that you go away and, you know, be people's best friends. We don't need to be everybody's best friend. Or have you ever met those pleasers in the world where they go out and try and please everybody and not pleasing nobody? So as a general rule, what we can do, has anyone come across matching, pacing and leading? Using matching and mirroring? Okay, I guess the science behind it, without going into all the details of the time that we've got, is that generally people will appreciate like for like. Think of your best friends, they tend to probably have the same values and beliefs as what you do. We communicate 58% through our body language. So sometimes adopting a similar, the same body language as somebody else can help them to connect to your, or help them feel they're connected to, you connect to their emotions, and they drop their guard a little bit. Okay, now if you think about it, imagine you're in a situation where, for whatever reason, you know, you go to a bank and you're being charged for one reason or the other, and the first thing you do is to go into the bank, and you've got that face over there, the first one, just the sad face, and the person in the customer service has got that face there. You're probably not going to feel very happy about that. Okay, so, and equally, if you're a coach, and someone comes in, they're very frustrated and overwhelmed, how do we match? How do we mirror it? How can we bring them out of that? Which is key. Which is something to think about. Now, I'm not suggesting if someone phones you up with an American accent, unless you're American, you start speaking like an American. Because I think, for all the will in the world, this guy might be a bit mad. Yet in saying that, maybe they're quietly spoken, bring the tonality down. If they're loud, then maybe bring it up a little bit, which is key. So getting the people to think about or feeling a connection is quite powerful. The other area that's really powerful in communication is our rep systems, how we process information through our senses. Who's aware of rep systems, representational systems? Okay, for those of you who aren't aware, it's another broad area in the field of coaching and NLP. We'll do as much as we can so you've got something to take away this evening and you can elaborate on. But we process information through our senses, see, hear, feel predominantly. Okay, so some people are very visual. Now, it's context dependent. Some people are very kinesthetic. Some people are very auditory. Okay, they're the three major senses. And if one person processes information through one sense in a matter of context, could you imagine someone who's very visual talking to someone who's very kinesthetic? It can be lost in translation. You know, has anyone ever asked for directions? You probably didn't do it as much these days as do it for sat nav. I remember once asking for directions. I was in Leeds. Anyone driven in Leeds? Okay, yeah. I stop and ask for directions. I'm here. The place I've got to go is just over there, probably where that back wall is. But there's a dual carriageway, and I stop and I ask this, you know, gentleman walking a dog some directions. How can I get to there? And he says, well, you go across. So I can see that, but I'm going to get hit by a car. How can I get to there? So he proceeds to help me out. Now, after he told me every pub in Leeds and every landmark in Leeds, you know, and every visual thing to look out for, I thought, all I want to do is get from here to there. I don't want a tour guide. You know, it's 9 o'clock, I've got to be till 9:30, I've got there early, and I just don't know how to get across. And I realised at that point there, the person being very visual, with all these visual expressions, and me being very kinesthetic, or literally get me out of the car and walk me there, just wasn't going to work. It wasn't going to work, so I had to find a different way. And I'm trying to break away and say, well, thank you, but I've got to get going, that's okay. Yeah, I know the way. As I'm driving now, it's still shouting out, and you'll go to the... No, it's all right, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm okay. Okay, so it can be very powerful stuff. And you know, you can sort of listen to people speak, and through people's conversation, visual people, they'll say certain words like picture, clear, sight. They're sort of key phrases they might mention. You've got auditory people who sort of phrases they might, you know, music and rhythm, and just key language patterns that they might use. Kinesthetic people, they might think like, you know, grasp and get a feel of, and certain things, rough, smooth. They're key things to think about in each domain, and it is very context dependent. There are tests that you can do, and we do an NLP course, and I want to email one out to you, and I do use them sometimes at situations. I use one once, well, I use them predominantly when I'm coaching to get an idea what someone might be, because it might make all the difference. It might make the difference. It might be that by using a flip chart in a coaching session, I achieve a positive result for a visual person. It might be that if I use a dictaphone to audio a session and give it back to the person, it might make a difference. It might be that if I do things kinesthetically, practically. I remember once working for when the Welsh Women's World Cup lacrosse team, delivering a program for them. It was a cycle mental skills program, and you know, we all sat in the classroom, and I felt that, well, I'd been told they weren't very responsive to psychology in the past. I sat in the classroom, I thought, well, maybe my suspicions, you know, are right. I fired over a rep systems test, and they all came back very kinesthetic. The next time I went in there, and I expected to do a classroom-based session, I took them in the gym, and I made it very practical, and they loved it. They gave me a round of applause at the end of it, took a lot from that, just by adapting it to a certain situation, which is key. And there's certain things that we can do. You know, you can look at sensory-based phrases, which are key. So if you go for a job interview, and someone says to you, how do you think you did in that last job? How do you see yourself going in this new job? Then you might give them a visual response. And that might resonate with them. Well, all things being equal, if you're working in the context of what the person's understanding is, it's key. If you've got a person telling you in a coaching session, you know, an auditory response, then you might use an auditory response back. You know, if you've got someone in the coaching session who gives you a kinesthetic response, well, I don't feel great, I can't, you know, get my head round it, or it's like banging my head against the wall, then the way you might structure the session is to use some of those kinesthetic responses. So it's all worth doing that. And one thing I'll do, and I think one thing that's quite useful for you, and I'm mindful of time, but a really powerful exercise you can do, is just take note of what people do and what they say. You know, be aware, you know, away from here, just be aware of what people say. An exercise I do, and I was going to do this evening, but time is getting the better of us, is to passively sit back and listen to a conversation and build an awareness of who's what and what is what, really. And that can be really, really powerful. Really powerful stuff when you're doing that. Because when you're looking for an outcome, and you've got an outcome in mind, this is very context dependent. I see a lot of people doing these rep system tests and they go away saying, I'm visual, I'm auditory, kinesthetic. You're not anything really. It's, you know, you could wake up out of bed one morning and be one thing or the other, but it's context dependent. It's choosing the moment. There's 100 people in the room, all going for the same job. The person doing the interviewing is very visual, and you know that, and you're aware of that, and then you do visual references. It could make makes a difference. You're doing a coaching session on the consultation to realise the person's very kinesthetic, and they sign up to your coaching package. Then session 2, 3 and 4 are kinesthetic based, and that could make a difference. So all these things are relative. You might be a salesperson and you realise someone who's buying from you is very auditory. Let's take the salesperson who's selling a hi-fi in the high street store. Someone comes in to buy the hi-fi. Now rather than let the person listen to it, they start showing them all these sound systems. Now, if the person's very auditory, what would you do? Let them listen to it, so they can engage in that. The perfect example is when you go and look for a new house with your partner. You notice the sound of the birds and they notice the windows. You know, you go for a car, one person notices the car engine and you notice, you know, the colour of the car. It's all relative really. But from a sales point of view, it's really powerful stuff, because that's how the person's processing the information. And I would go so far to say a lot of problems in the workplace would be solved if people were aware of that. It's almost like speaking a different language. If two people are very predominantly have a preference in one area. Now generally people have preferences in 2 areas, yet there are some people, certainly in my experience, who've got a very heavy preference in one area. And being aware of that can be very powerful stuff. Very, very powerful stuff. I can think of a number of experiences in coaching sessions where if I'm in a situation where you don't think you're getting through from a coaching point of view, you just don't seem to break through, you're just not getting through to the other person. Think what's going on here? This could be that difference that makes a difference. Now, being aware of what their preferred learning style is. That's me on early morning radio. There you go. At the ungodly hour of 5 o'clock in the morning. I don't do the 5 o'clock show anymore. Yeah, too early in the morning for got better things to do at 5 o'clock in the morning these days. But the key point was, and the key thing is, you know, certainly a lot of what we've talked about in this situation, in a lot of professional environments, is instrumental. Whether you're a coach, a butcher, a baker, a candlestick maker, whatever you do, you know, I'm sure you will take a lot away from the actual seminar. And certainly in my experience of, you know, coaching and broadcasting and writing, and I think the most powerful of all the processes that have worked certainly in my experiences is communicating. And communicating, I'm not suggesting that you go out there and, you know, put everything elegantly and clear. And it's just getting through to the other side, which is key. One of my colleagues with a psychology and NLP background, probably one of the best NLPers in the country, really good. Now, she had this job to work with a football team, very good at what she did, knew her stuff inside out, okay. She was in a situation where she was doing these sessions, and these sessions were very visual, PowerPoint based. And she said to me, I don't understand why I'm not getting through to this team. Okay, what could we do otherwise? Could you come along and lend your thoughts and feelings? I've gone into this team who literally has to win every game. They've got 10 games to go, literally every game to survive. And I'm stood there and I'm looking at the group. And these guys, they were in a professional league, yet they'd only just come off that professional league a couple of years earlier. And I thought, what the hell have I got myself into? You know, the bunch of players were just behaving like, you know, a bunch of 12-year-old school kids. I thought, what the hell have I got myself into here? And I thought, what can I do different? What can I do? It goes back to what I said earlier, what can I do different? I said, you know what, we're going to go outside. And so what we're going to do outside, I'm going to get the fitness coach to warm me up and I'm going to do something different. And it was at that point there, I wanted them to get a feeling for what we were doing, kinesthetically. I had in mind, there was method in the madness, what I wanted them to do. What I wanted to do is to get a feeling for what it was like to start winning again. So I got a video of their best performance which was a FA Cup match against Nottingham Forest. They played really, really well. They played them off the park. I got that, and I said, what I'm going to do, I'm going to take these guys outside. I'm going to run them to they can't stand anymore. I'm going to bring them in and switch that on. They're going to build neurological connection there, a bit of anchoring there, the technique. And I ran them. And I ran them and ran them and ran them. They were getting 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off, to the point that, they were literally on the brink of collapsing. And I said, we're going to go back in there. If anyone, so much as slips out of line, we go back up there again. And lo and behold, the young lad from Liverpool put his foot on it. he said something he shouldn't have said, and we went back out again. And when we went back in again, you could hear a pin drop. And basically we put the video on, and I showed them what they could do, and that was the start of our journey. We didn't have ups and downs. We survived in the end. We won, I think, 8 or 9 out of 10, but survived. We turned that around. And I think the moral of the story is that communication is a broad area. It's getting your message across, which is the most powerful thing, which is important, based on your sessions. Getting the client to reach the positive outcome, which is key. And these are things that, you do thinking beyond the box. That's what's really important, being able to think beyond the actual box itself. Having the awareness of your emotion, other people's emotions, how they might feel. Having awareness of how the person that you're working with processes information through their senses is very powerful stuff. Being aware that people aren't their behaviour at identity level. Okay, separating the person from behaviour is powerful stuff. If someone makes a mistake, if you give someone instructions to do some photocopying, and they go away and the photocopy gets jammed, and they do 1,000 copies, and you say, you idiot, that's a silly thing to do, how do you think they might respond? Because you're attacking them, their identity. If you tell them, okay, what they did, and the process, because we don't live in an airy-fairy world, I'm not certainly suggesting that you pat everyone on the back who's not performing, certainly, but if you go for the process, how do you think they might feel? A lot better, because there's nothing personal against them. And certainly in my experience as a coaching point of view, the behaviour. If someone's struggling with overeating, for example, it's not having a go at them at identity level, because on identity level, there's a lot more to them than just that problem that might exist. It's just that behavioural pattern. How can we rectify it? And a lot of times, the reason why things break down in communication, or people don't succeed in achieving the outcomes, is because people feel that violation, that personal violation. Okay, so if someone has a go at one of your beliefs, or someone, questions one of your values, how do you think you might feel? How do you think you might feel? Do you feel your values are violated? Anyone?
Under attack.
Yeah, precisely. Exactly. And how's that going to affect your dialogue in a given situation?
You get defensive.
Precisely. And we go back to those barriers. It's almost like a vicious circle. So having that awareness is quite useful. And managing all that can be pretty powerful stuff. Reflecting on some of the things that we've covered tonight can be really powerful stuff, because if tomorrow you were to pick up a phone and phone up that place that you went for a job interview and find out where you stand, either or you were to go in there and make the appointment to see the bank manager, things that you can do that might be, might be putting off. You might have a phone number on your phone and think, should I phone, should I not phone? All these things could make the difference in the direction of your own life. Certainly in my experience when I was setting up as a coach, there were people I thought, well, should I call, should I not call? What should I do? People I've worked with, and some people I've worked with, I felt, is it my place to give them a call? How do I feel about doing that? I thought, well, really, they're just a person like anybody else. I'll put the ball in their court. They play ball, great. They don't play ball, we live to fight another day, don't we? Which is quite useful and effective. But what I'd like to do moving forward, with the time we've got left, is I just want to open things up a little bit. Are there any questions, comments, otherwise, anyone want to sort of talk about before we break away? I mean, I'll still be here for a little while longer if you want to come up and have a chat about anything. But is there any questions, anything we've covered that you want to, any questions? Anything we've covered so far?
Is it a chicken and egg situation? This, where it's important to set boundaries, but we're not taught, or my age group, we weren't taught to set boundaries. We were taught probably biblical things, like,
to acquiesce.
So, you know, in my personal life, I'm 65, and I'm only just beginning to realise that all my life I have not set boundaries. So, all sorts of horrible things have gone
Maybe
wrong.
not consciously, but unconsciously. Maybe not consciously set boundaries, but unconsciously. It's like the goals analogy. You might not consciously set goals, but unconsciously you've got goals. You get up in the morning, go to work, it's a goal. You get up in the morning to pay the last your bills, it's a goal. So it's consciously and being aware of that. That's a great point. I think that boundaries are important, and we've got different boundaries in different situations. Yet where we draw the line is entirely up to us. Definitely from a coaching point of view, the boundaries have to be firm, very professional. Yet in saying that, you want to find the balance, because we are human. And I think that people respond from a coaching point of view to someone who is human. From a coaching point of view, you know, I would go so far to say that the people who go see a coach, you probably don't want one of those, American motivational coaches who's had, £1 million worth of surgery, facelifting, and their teeth are whitened every week, and they're wearing a mask. It's probably not real, is it? So you probably want some sort of who's real, yet there is that sort of boundary that you need to set. So from a coaching point of view, boundaries are very important. Where you draw the line is up to you. Certainly in my situation, many, many years ago, literally in a different lifetime, I was running a very successful business in London. We were training anybody who's anybody. I was doing very well. I had a very luxury sports career. And I thought it was never going to end. Serious injury, and the rug got swept under my feet. Out on my backside, I did things that, when we're talking about being assertive, that you wouldn't dream of. But I had to eat. I'd pick up the call. I'd make that phone call. And you've got to come out your comfort zone, because you realise, you know what, I've got to do something here. And if I don't, as a result, so sometimes learning experience, but I wouldn't wish that on anybody, to have to just learn for experience. I think that the key thing is, in any situation where all things are concerned, is, be in that driving seat. Definitely. Go out there and I suppose, you'll probably regret things that you didn't do rather than things that you did do, which are key. To all these certain things, but certainly in certain situations our resilience will be tested, that's for sure. Definitely in certain situations you might not be comfortable doing certain things or saying certain things, but I guess in life we are the single swimmer. I think it's a great point. In schools, how much emotional training do you do? Certainly in my experience, all the courses I've run over many years, I think there's been 2 or 3 people who said that they did some emotional training, not at school but at university, and that's part of the degree they did. But literally everybody else I've come across has done little or nothing. We like to think, well, we're governed for our emotions, aren't we? So it doesn't really make sense.
It's about realising that you can make a choice as well.
Precisely.
I look at people who don't have that choice. They don't have that. Within mental health and learning disability. Yeah. It makes you realise how lucky you are. You have got that choice, you can change.
That's a great point. And I suppose you can reflect on people who have had what we call disability. Helen Keller, her disabilities. Okay, I would say that there's people who are very physically able to a certain extent, but I would go so far to saying that are bound by the limitations of their own mind. I've seen people who, and I have the great privilege of working with people with the most horrendous disabilities who have become Olympic athletes. So it's how you respond to certain situations. You choose your response. If you want to wallow in your own self-pity because your parents didn't buy that brand new car, or because you didn't get that job, or you felt on Facebook someone had a better holiday than you, it's up to you. But if you want to sort of decide that whatever circumstances are to deal with the cards you've been dealt with, that's up to you as well. Certainly in my experience, it's a great point that you make there. People in all situations, but I think it's about perspective. But I guess on the other side of that, flip side of that, how do we judge? You know, I think ultimately it's what's on our list as well. We've all got different levels of resilience. You know, some people can endure a lot. Some people struggle. Some people can endure all sorts of things that go on in their life. And they walk outside, they've got a scratch in the car, and it sends them off the rails. So it's all relative to each individual, really, which is key. But there is that danger, sometimes from a coaching point of view. And I'll be honest, certainly in my experience, people come along and talk about certain problems they might have. I thought, well, in my own mind, I've had the reserve judgment. You know, I'm thinking, well, what the hell have you got to complain about type thing? But in saying that, I've got to appreciate and respect it's on their list. And if it wasn't a problem to them, they wouldn't be coming along to see me for that situation, really. So it is a balance, and how we communicate that is instrumental. You know, you'll be faced with all situations in all sorts of, you know, positions you're in. You know, most people come along for all sorts of weird and wonderful reasons, and I guess you just got to adapt to that situation accordingly to achieve a positive outcome. Is there anything else anyone's got?
I think on getting back to the lady's point about boundaries, subconsciously we probably do have boundaries, all of us. So I see it as when I think of the clients I deal with, sometimes they know their boundaries because they know they've been violated. Those boundaries have been violated a few times or many times. So it's helping them with the assertiveness side to assert the boundaries. They've got them.
Yeah.
But there's a difference between having them and being able to assert them.
Yeah.
That's a
that's
a pedantic point, but it makes a difference to that person. Because they know what they've had done to them is wrong. They just don't know how to stop it.
I mean, that's, you know, another area. I guess that's a broad area, and we could talk till midnight about that area. But I think ultimately, you know, the more you do this sort of stuff, the more you implement into your professional existence, the more emotional muscle you build in certain situations. And certainly, if you do something for long enough, it starts becoming habitual behaviour. And if you're getting positive rewards from that habitual behaviour, then you're going to probably do more of it, which is key. Now, okay, you could argue the flip side of that. People do certain behaviours that are negative and are rewarded for a secondary gain. The person with all the problems, with the weight of the world on their shoulders, who gets gratification from sharing that. As long as people sort of sympathise with that, they're going to keep going on about it. If someone sort of draws a line, says, actually, you know what, it's not really doing anything for you, you can choose to go one way or the other, then it comes back to their choice. And that's personal choice, really. And I always say from a coaching point of view, what's really important is that, you know, I guess it's not our position to play golf. You know, what people want to do with their life is up to them. You know, I certainly see people that live their life in a certain way. I wouldn't do that if it were me. Yet, in saying that that's what they want to do, then let it be. You know, good luck to them. You know, it's their choice to do what they want to do, really. But it's finding that balance. But I'd like to think as a professional, someone who comes through the door, you can help them to move forward. And I think that the most important thing to helping them, the most powerful way you're going to help anybody, is drawing not just from what you learn academically through a course, but your own experience. Put that mark on it. You can't value that. The experience you've got in life and professionally, it's invaluable. And I guess we're not sort of taught to do that in a work environment as well. It's all a very fabricated process. But academically, the way the system is put together, you know, we follow a pathway that is very academically orientated. And we're not drawing from all these experiences that are quite useful. Certainly in my experience of some of these major, you know, businesses, there's been people in that environment that could have invaluable thoughts that could help turn things around. You've got people on the reception who've been there for many years, you've got people, you know, cleaning, all sorts really, that could give them invaluable advice, but they don't take it for whatever reason, because they've got this hierarchy that exists for one reason or the other. But you know, that's one of the things that goes on here. But thank you again, and yeah, look forward to seeing you.